Did you know that the most important chapter of American history, the one that explains the racial wealth gap, the voting rights battles, the criminal justice system, and virtually every racial dynamic in American life today, is the chapter that schools teach the least honestly? This is the full story of Reconstruction and its deliberate destruction. The Civil War ended in April 1865. Over the next 5 years, 3 constitutional amendments transformed the legal status of Black Americans. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th guaranteed citizenship and equal protection under the law. The 15th guaranteed the right to vote regardless of race. They were enforced, for a time, by federal troops stationed throughout the South, and by a Freedmen's Bureau that provided food, medical care, education, and legal assistance to millions of formerly enslaved people. Black men voted in massive numbers. Black men were elected to office at every level. 2 Black U.S. senators from Mississippi, Black members of Congress from South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and North Carolina. Black men served as lieutenant governors, state legislators, sheriffs, judges, and school board members across the South. Black communities built institutions, churches, schools, businesses, mutual aid societies. The freedom they had been denied for generations was being exercised, visibly, politically, economically, and it was producing results. For a brief, extraordinary moment, a genuinely multiracial democracy was taking shape in the American South, and the people who had built that South on the backs of enslaved labor watched it happening with fury. The organized campaign to destroy Reconstruction did not wait for legal mechanisms. It started with violence. The Ku Klux Klan was founded in 1865, immediately after the war, by Confederate veterans who understood that their way of life depended on preventing Black political power from taking root. They operated as a terrorist organization. Nighttime raids, arson, beating, murder, and targeted assassination of Black political leaders and their white allies. They were joined by other paramilitary organizations, the White League, the Red Shirts, the White Line, each operating in different states but with the same mission: terrorize Black voters, murder Black office holders, and make the exercise of constitutional rights as dangerous as possible. The Colfax Massacre, April 13th, 1873. An estimated 150 Black men were killed in a single day in Grant Parish, Louisiana, defending the results of a legitimate election. Men were murdered after surrendering. 3 white men were eventually convicted under federal law. The Supreme Court overturned the convictions in 1876, ruling the federal government could not prosecute private individuals for civil rights violations. The Supreme Court provided legal cover for white supremacist violence. The first pillar of Reconstruction was gone. The presidential election of 1876 was disputed. Republican Rutherford Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden both claimed victory. The outcome was decided by a political negotiation known as the Compromise of 1877. The deal: Hayes would receive the presidency. In exchange, the last federal troops would be withdrawn from the South. Reconstruction would effectively end. The troops left, and immediately, the machinery of suppression rebuilt itself. Within years, Black voters across the South were systematically disenfranchised through poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and direct violence. Between 1877 and 1900, the number of Black elected officials in the South went from hundreds to nearly 0. Black senators, gone. Black congressmen, gone. Black sheriffs, judges, and school board members, gone. It took less than a generation to undo what Reconstruction had built. Not because Black Americans stopped fighting, because the federal government stopped protecting them. With federal protection gone and the Supreme Court providing legal cover, Southern states moved quickly to codify the racial hierarchy in law. Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. The Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal facilities were constitutionally permissible. Segregation was now not just practiced, it was legally protected. Poll taxes, literacy tests designed to be failed, grandfather clauses that exempted white voters from requirements Black voters had to meet. White primaries, the Democratic Party declared itself a private organization and excluded black voters from the only election that mattered in the South. Lynching accelerated. Between 1877 and 1950, an estimated 4,000 black people were lynched in the American South. Public murders, often attended by crowds, sometimes photographed, almost never prosecuted. Ida B. Wells documented over 700 lynchings in a 3-year period alone. Over 200 anti-lynching bills were introduced in Congress. None passed. The first federal anti-lynching law was not signed until 2022. And here's why this story matters. Reconstruction is the most important chapter of American history precisely because it shows that racial equality was achievable and that it was deliberately, violently, legally dismantled. The argument that America is simply progressing slowly toward equality ignores the fact that full political equality was achieved in 1868 and then taken away by 1877. The racial wealth gap today is not a mystery or an accident. It is the compound interest of the land that was not given, the wages that were not paid, the banks that did not lend, the businesses that were burned, the votes that were suppressed, and the constitutional rights that were gutted, systematically, over 150 years. Every voting rights battle happening today is the continuation of the same campaign that ended Reconstruction in 1877. The tactics change. The goal doesn't. They won full constitutional rights in 1868. It took less than a decade to take them back. Understanding that is the beginning of understanding everything. Follow us for more hidden black history on MichelleDuffieTV. Like and subscribe, because these stories deserve to be told. Please comment. Did your school teach you that Reconstruction was deliberately destroyed, not simply ended? Drop what you learned versus what you just heard. This conversation matters. We don't glorify injustice. We reveal truth, so history can't repeat itself.